right now we're on our cloud data protection panel discussion, which is on cloud sovereignty, protecting cloud data centers in the cybersecurity age. We're looking at talking about developing and deploying a comprehensive security strategy, how important it is for enterprises migrating to cloud to protect their cloud-based assets. How does AI help organizations to drive better data-driven decision-making and improve data security, ease data complexity, provide a central access point, bring great data visibility, lessen legal and regulatory risk, and save costs. Also, we're looking at talking about security techniques from both software and hardware aspects for protecting data in cloud, general privacy challenges and the GDPR specific challenges, cloud compliance with intelligent context-aware AI, enforcing segmentation and threat controls for workloads in IaaS, PaaS, and SaaS environments, and consider the availability of the critical cloud infrastructure for your overall value network. Well, ladies and gentlemen, with this, we're going to be joined by our eminent panelists. First up, Benedict Suleiman, the Vice President, IT Director, Ramsey Saim Darby, Healthcare Indonesia, joining us. Well, Benedict has more than 20 years of experience in multiple industry and is a Microsoft certified engineer who has a vast experience in the ICT operation, project management, security, hardware, and network infrastructure, and is currently leading the IT transformation in one of the most leading hospital chain in Indonesia to produce a standardized, centralized, and a consolidated IT environment. Thank you so much, Benedict, for joining us today.
Pleasure is mine. Thank you so much.
Joining us is also going to be Dr. Chen Yuli, who will join us shortly, who's the Director, Secretary General, Taipei Smart City Project Management Office, Global Organization of Smart Cities, Taiwan. Well, Dr. Lee has worked on numerous central government projects, including Smart City Promotion Project, Cloud Computing Industry Project, UX Project, e-learning project, and has over 15 years of research experience in the ICT-related industry. So we're going to be shortly welcoming him as well. Now we have joining us on the screen, Siddharth Pandey, Cloud Solution Architect, Alibaba Cloud Indonesia. Well, Siddharth has a decade-long experience in the IT industry and is certified Kubernetes administrator and a certified solution architect with Alibaba, AWS, GCP, and Azure. Thank you so much, Siddharth, for joining us today.
Hey, glad to be here.
Likewise, and now joining us on the screen is going to be the moderator of this session. Ladies and gentlemen, it is time now to welcome on the screen Ray Luktu, the founder and CEO, Hungry Workforce Philippines. Well, Ray is a founder of a digital and a culture transformation consulting firm. He's also a fellow at the US-based Institute for Digital Transformation. Thank you so much, Ray, for joining us today and being a part and being the moderator today.
My pleasure, Bhavana.
Ladies and gentlemen, now with this, we also allow you an opportunity to ask questions to our eminent panelists by typing it up in the Q&A section. Remember, these questions will be addressed to the panelists if time allows towards the end. With this, Ray, the stage and screen is all yours. Dr. Chen will join us shortly, but we have our panelists. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Bhavana. Well, the global health crisis has accelerated the adoption of cloud computing among companies and organizations, with employees working remotely and business customers and consumers using apps in everyday lives. More and more organizations are using cloud computing for their applications or as their platform and data storage. In fact, according to an IDC study, access risk and cloud infrastructure security rank among the top 5 security priorities for companies in the next 18 months. In the panel discussion, we will talk about age and related topics. Right, so we have 3 distinguished panelists who will have issues as well as opportunities in cloud security. Right, so let's start off with some questions. There's a lot of questions revolving around cloud security. Oh, Dr. Leon, you're welcome. Welcome back.
Hello.
All right. So my first question, wow, this is timely, Dr. Leo. My first question I will direct to you. So how important is it for enterprises migrating to cloud to protect their cloud-based assets? How important is that, Dr. Leo?
Okay, thank you. I'm sorry for the delay because I have another another talk. The time is very close. I'm sorry. And also I'm now in hospital because I just take the vaccine.
Okay.
We can choose time, so I have to take the vaccine here. Okay, so I think to for the people to deploy their cloud in the public cloud, I think it's a very important issue and very it's always very comprehensive security strategy is very important for both private and public. But however, I think it depends on the situation, because in the private, I think the best way to protect your access, your resource, your data is the best way public to put your everything in the public cloud. However, I think for the public sector, such as city government and also the federal government, maybe we don't think the same way, because there's a lot of public, we call it a public politic problem. So that means, most of the time we were using the hybrid cloud. That means for part of service, it always be better if we can use the public cloud, because we can guarantee the most stable service to our citizens, our users. But in some of the case, we need to make sure that everything is under control. So I think public cloud definitely is one of very important way to protect not only privacy and of course your information, your data. However, I have to say it still depends. So for some of very classical, very important data for some of the government, I think most of the government probably they will use a hybrid model to deal with that. So, but if you are private and also the small medium size company, I think that the public cloud solution probably is the only way that you can better protect your data.
So you're saying, Dr. Leo, that the public cloud is a secure solution for organizations, including SMEs. Is that right?
Yeah, exactly.
All right. Siddharth, let's go back. Go to you. So you're a cloud solution architect. So how same question, but how is it important? How important is it for companies to protect their data, to protect their asset in a cloud-based environment? And what sort of strategies, security strategies, can they develop and deploy?
Ray, so we see today many of the organizations are going to cloud. There are many organizations which are also known as cloud-born, because from the very start, they have everything on cloud. When we talk of security or the importance of security strategy, or in fact, for that matter, the importance of anything, can be estimated by the fact that what would happen if that thing was not important, if that thing is not paid attention to, what would happen. And when it comes to security, if I have no security strategy, nothing comprehensive that I'm looking at, what could go wrong at my side? For our customers, it could be access of their application by some hackers, where they have changed the font of their web application or put up some nasty images just for fun. And then from there, it can take a serious turn. They can have their application locked out and not being released unless they have paid some ransom. So we have seen cases of ransomware. And at the very worst of it, we have cases like a company named Codespaces in 2014. Their business stopped running overnight because a hacker went into their system and deleted all their files and deleted all their backup. And that company ceased to exist just overnight. So, this shows the importance of having a comprehensive security strategy, because if you don't have it, then things can go south for you pretty fast. And when we talk of security strategy, we are looking at a two-pronged approach. One is, and security in cyber world works very similar to security in real world. If I have my house, I would want my house to be secure. I have high walls, I have a couple of guard dogs, I have video surveillance camera and all of that setup, and it serves two purposes. First is, in case there is an attack, in case there is someone who's trying to steal something or a robber who's trying to get into my property, my security system will be able to fend off. You'll be able to defend my property. That is number one. And second is, when the thief comes to my area and he sees my house, which is completely fortified, he will be discouraged from attacking itself. So not only to defend when the attack comes, but also to demotivate the attacker. And what would happen is, when he looks at my house and he sees that it is completely fortified, he will say, this looks to be a difficult task. Let me find another house where we don't have these kind of features. And that is sadly what happens in cyber world as well. If I have not made a comprehensive security strategy for my organization and every organization around me has done it, the hacker would eventually come for me because he would find me as an easy target. Hence, it is very important not to just have a security strategy, but it should be as up to date as the industry requires. Because otherwise, things can go south pretty soon. We have seen cases, we all see millions of attacks happening every day. And it's very important to have such a security strategy. And if we talk about strategy on cloud, I think one model that really defines it is the shared responsibility security model. We talk about when we move data to cloud, the first question or the first hesitation that people had was, I don't want my data to go out of my premises. I do not know where is it being stored. I'm not very comfortable. But if you go to data centers today, and I was in a data center last week with a customer, we wanted to show them the data center. It looks like you are inside a jail. There are big walls, there are 10 feet long gates, and there are multiple security channels. It is extremely fortified, a kind of investment which, if a normal organization makes, it will be very, very expensive for them, because security is not their core business. But when we talk about moving data to cloud's business is security. Hence they're able to invest more, hence they're able to ensure that the security is up to date. So it's always more secure today to move to cloud rather than take chances at your own data center, because then the investment will be very high if we have to do it ourselves. Having said that, there is a lot of security that is now handled by cloud, but a comprehensive security strategy also enables or asks customer to ensure that there are some things managed from their end. I can have like 10 feet walls inside which my server is there, very superb hardware security. But if my customers, users have set up their password as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, or they are sharing private keys, inside the organization, or a junior employee has access to all the setup in the organization, then it will be difficult. So, it's a shared responsibility. A lot of data security comes from cloud, but in terms of authorization, in terms of access control, customers also need to play a strong part to result in a comprehensive security strategy.
Yeah, Siddharth, nicely said. No, I couldn't agree more. No, so public cloud nowadays is highly secure, but the organization has the responsibility to complement that with a comprehensive security strategy. Let's go to you, Benedict. No, as a practitioner, no, and artificial intelligence is highly talked about these days. No, how is AI helping organizations drive better data-driven decision making and also improve data security?
Yeah, so highlighting what Siddharth mentioned earlier, we need to understand what's the importance to be put into the public cloud or in the private cloud, or even in the hybrid cloud first, right? We have to understand first the ownership of the data, whether it is only the ownership belongs to the customers or is it belongs also as our own asset, right? But in a case like that, means after that we could understand on how to protect it. And then in terms of approaches or any other frameworks, AI has been one of the key to support us in terms of the cloud, right? Otherwise, if we are still fending off the model, just like what Siddharth mentioned earlier, with the old school model, like when we are still in the data center, we cage everything, we do only the fingerprinting, also the CCTV, the SOC, the standard one. At the end of the day, you cannot cope with all of that. For us to be able to manage the security in the cloud infrastructure, we have to deploy the AI, right? we have to analyze the threats. What are the threats that frequently happening, and then how we should be able to mitigate it. I mean, the implementation of several tools like SIEM, right, or UEBA, right? Those are the major tools that we can have by having the tools to analyze and conducting the mitigation of the threats immediately, right? Plenty of partners like IBM or any other partners, they can already support the SIEM solution. That's one of the things that I think AI can support in terms of bringing up the security. But again, the key, in my opinion, has always been whether we would like to put our own data, our own asset in the public or in the hybrid cloud situations. Because if we only thinking that, okay, let's put some or let's put all into the cloud, that will determine your strategy, right? And for us as a business, in the perspective of business, that sort of strategy will also define our future strategy on how we could fend off and also improve our own security compared to the threat itself.
Interesting, Benedict. No, Dr. Leo, no, in the public sector context.
Yes.
So the same question: how is AI helping the public sector in driving better data-driven decision making?
Okay, I think it's a very, very nice question. You know, and AI and data collection, of course, is a very, very important tool for for helping for the public sector government to better decision making, provide better service. However, I think lots of people, I think from the public sector, I see lots of cases that confuse the orders. I think AI and data, for collecting lots of cities, they collect lots of data. Collect data is a very, very good foundation for for the digital digital city, for the digital twins, for make lots of AI. Yes, but I think the first priority is not collect data. I believe the first thing we need to do is try to figure out what exactly we want to deal with the data. I would say there are two different levels of the AI. For the lower level AI, it's very straightforward. For example, we can analyze the image to recognize the license, to recognize the people flow. We can recognize lots of things. But for the higher, that's the easier part. Yeah, you just use it. But for the higher part, lots of cities, they try to build a data center, but there only very few of them, know what exactly they want to do with the data center, because currently most of the service already build up their service model. That means they collect the specific data and analyze it and put it to and then output as a service. That's exactly how people do. But if you collect lots of data and and you wish they can just magically happen some of the very, very fantastic services, that's impossible. So that means in most of the time you need to define your scenario first. For example, we already have a small data center in the transportation department. Why we need a bigger data center in mayor's office? So that means the data center for the mayor level must, it always have to, provide real different service as the Department of Transportation. So, I believe that the first thing we need to do is we need to ask ourselves what exactly we want to deal with, and what is the problem we need to solve, and what is the possible work, how it possible work, and what is missing in this scenario. Then it's time to collect data. So I just want to say to ultimately collect all kind of data is not a best way to build a smarter city. And in most of the time, it's more like it more like a show, smart city shows. It doesn't provide any specific, any real service to the public because you don't know what you are doing. You just, making a very fantastic 3D model, and then it almost provide nothing, no real service to the citizens. So that's my point. I think if you want to do AI, that's a good thing, but you need to focus on what exactly you want to deal with. Thank you.
Yeah, interesting, Dr. Lee. So what I picked up is that we have to go back to basics. Now, what are we exactly trying to solve? And then it dictates what kind of data, what how much data do we need, and then AI will do the trick. Now,
Yes.
that's a great segue on the topic on data. So, Siddharth, let's talk about data. Now, what are the approaches? How do we manage data in the cloud? Like having a central access point, data visibility. So, what are the approaches that you can share?
I think once you have your data strategy in place and you have all the solutions trying to defend you from various sort of attacks, you can have like a firewall, you have network firewall, you have anti-DDoS solution. So with all of these solutions, there's a lot of data that is generated. And because there are different portals, it might become a lengthy task to aggregate all of these and then give you some data about how to improve your security. So for a purpose of this, it is very helpful if you have some sort of a central dashboard or a central panel or a single source of truth where you can have all the data from different security services coming into and giving you an information out of the data, what to do and how to improve the security. Of course, all these solutions available on cloud today, they have their own APIs. So you have APIs for PaaS, you have for DDoS. You can always use those APIs and put them into a dashboard where you can see all their information maybe in the form of a score, in the form of a bar chart, graph, and whatever. And then to take decision on basis of that. But one advantage of cloud is that many of such solutions are also provided ready-made to you. So I work for Alibaba Cloud. I can talk to you about the one of such solutions that we have, which is called Security Center. What it does is it is the overarching blanket for your security across all assets on the cloud. So it takes data from all of these solutions and gives you a security score out of 100. So a security score of 95 is very good score, but a security score of 72 might not be very good. And then it tells you how can you improve your security score. So there must be, there could be some of the regulatory changes that have not been made. There could be a bunch of passwords which are more than 90 days old, have not been changed, or something that the passwords are not complex enough, or there are some security patches which have not been deployed on some of the machines. So having a central source of truth makes life very easy, because otherwise for an enterprise where you have thousands of microservices, let's say, managing data, security data for all of these individually will become a nightmare. You will not only have data for as a single view, but should be able to deploy changes also. Let's say if there is a security patch that has come on and I want to deploy that security patch across my organization, I should be able to do that from a single point of view instead of having to go and talk to each team and tell them to do that. That is where cloud really becomes handy, because you get all of these services available, and from a single panel like Security Center that I spoke about, you are able to understand your security situation, and then you are able to rectify by putting on some measures across all the assets.
All right. So having a single source of truth when it comes to data. Benedict, now let's talk about privacy. So, in the private sector, what general privacy challenges and GDPR specific challenges do you encounter in your country and in the region?
Okay, let me give some example. I mean, I work in the healthcare industry right now, and for us, medical information has always been the key, especially for people always asking about the details. And when we are trying to put that into the market, right, so we could be able to do the AI also in terms of supporting or analyzing to give better treatment. That has always been questionable, right? And I also think Dr. Lee may be thinking the same thing, or it was always happening all across the world, where privacy of the medical data has always been on questions. In Indonesia particularly, right, the regulation is still very, very old, I mean, in my opinion, right? Even though the ministry is starting to make some changes in terms of the regulations. But because my company, actually, we are a subsidiary from Ramsay Healthcare in Australia, we follow up the regulation from them. That's why we comply to them. But when we have to align it with the local regulation, there's a slight difference, right? When actually our reference in Australia is actually much more stricter compared to the government here. Another example, when this COVID is starting to rescinding after the vaccination in Indonesia for the past few months, the Ministry of Healthcare, they introduced a new application for the people to be able to identify who has been vaccinated or not and how to trace them wherever they are going. So for instance, when you are visiting a mall, you can use that application, you can check in, so the government will know that, so you are going to that area, or you can go to school, or you can go to any other public places. But the one thing that's actually not being controlled is who's managing the data, right? Who's actually owning the data? And those are the problems. So we have this data, huge data, where people are roaming around, even people with positive COVID still also roaming around, right? How we can do that? How can we can treat them, right? For instance, we have the analysis, and then we can check, okay, this sort of people apparently travel between his home to the mall a couple of times or everything. Okay, we have to isolate them. This area, we can do some predictive treatments that we can do for them, right, as part of the medical conditions. But at this moment, it is not being conducted like that. It's only for tracing purposes. And if it's only for tracing purposes, it's no difference compared to the data that actually was being gathered, like Google or even Microsoft, right? And any sort of data analytics that was sent out by our own PC or notebooks to the cloud, this is almost the same. But the approach now that we have to look upon, the data privacy, the owner of those sort of applications has to be cleared up. One instance of the big problem that this is not yet determined is even the data of the president was leakage around 2 weeks ago, right? That's very funny, right? I mean, and when it happens, people are pointing fingers. Or is it because of the healthcare, or is it because of the election? Who owns it? Or the ministry? Or is it the palace? No one is taking charge after that, right? But taking back about what I'm saying, right? When we are talking about the ownership, again, if it's related to the medical situation within our own premises, we have to take care of it. People have to realize about that first. And that it will also determine the strategy, or whether we are going to put it some on the cloud, or we put all in the cloud, or we still go old school, put on premise. That will be the decision of the strategy.
So who owns the data? And ultimately, should be responsible to protect it. All right. So, Dr. Leo, in your perspective in the public sector in Taiwan, what's your view on data privacy challenges nowadays?
Okay, thank you. I think, of course, the data and the general privacy problem is, one of our major problems when you're trying to initiate lots of smart city solutions. Especially trying to analyze the data. That for example, in Taiwan, actually, the regulation in Taiwan is compliant with the GDPR, so it's very strict to use the private data. So that means we cannot do lots of things. For example, we cannot do the facial recognition, in most of the case. That means, the service will provide with a limit, but I think it's fine because, it just need to let people that also for the private sector know that that's the limitation, for the smart solution. So far so good. But I think, because of the pandemic, the people will more, have the durabilities is bigger right now for the citizens, but still have some boundary. For example, we are allowed to collect their route, their living chat for collect their personal data, but we only can save them for about 28 days. So so that means we need to have a very good mechanism to helping us to to negotiate, to communicate with the public how exactly we can deal with the data. So yeah, so it's very important. You need to make the citizen trust the government. And there's another issue is that's a very difficult problem for us. It's the identification issues, because we all know we need to collect the identified personal data, but there's another very well defined of what exactly it's identified data. We have lots of conversation and lots of communication with the different department, law department. Basically it's a very fuzzy area. No one can tell us what exactly how can we say we complete the identification of the personal data. So for some of the time, some of the cases depend on the who you communicate with. I mean, that's the decision made by the people. So some of the cases they won't so care about. So you can have a you can have a bigger ability to collect more data. But for some of the case, you even can do anything. Yeah. So I think probably it's the major issue that we face right now. Even we try to we comply with GDPR, but this the major problem is there's no specific definition of what is the identified data, personal data. I think that probably need to resolve.
Oh,
yeah.
Interesting. So
yeah, that's my opinion. Thank you.
So yeah, defining what data exactly is, and communicating to the public, how we protect public data. That brings us to some security techniques. Siddharth, I know you spoke about this briefly, but in your perspective, what security techniques from a both software and hardware perspective are the approaches for protecting data in the cloud?
Ray, when we talk about security techniques, be it on hardware or on software, if we talk about hardware or for physical security, I already spoke to you about how a data center is very heavily guarded. You have very difficult to enter into a data center and do something. But if you look at the attacks that are happening, you would really have an attack where there is a physical penetration inside the data center and someone is putting some USB on a server, like we see in movies like Mission Impossible and James Bond and all the spy movies, but that never happens in real life. In real life, most of the attacks happen from some hacker sitting in Serbia or in Russia or somewhere in Eastern Europe country. There is no physical access required. So having said that, physical access or physical security, of course, for an enterprise customer is not a very high priority on themselves, because that is managed for them by the cloud provider. The cloud provider takes ensures physical security, network security, and all of those aspects. So yes, from that perspective, they are covered. But where they need to really ensure that they have security techniques well covered is from their own software side, which is first is to ensure that you're using optimum security solutions for your applications, like having web application firewall in place. If your application is susceptible to DDoS attacks, then have an optimum anti-DDoS solution in place, have a network firewall in place, and ensure that all the rules are well defined and up to date with your security requirements. So that is number one. And of course, as we said, in the shared responsibility model, the authorization and access control is with the customer. That is a very important security technique. Ensure that only those people, and the underlying principle for that is never trust anyone. Only those people who need to have absolute access to the system should have it, and only that much access that is required for them. So it's very important to have that kind of access control in place. And security, more like a measure, it's like a culture in the organization where everybody has to be a part of it. And one example of that would be, you need to have a culture of, let's say, not having your private keys embedded in the code, or not having the culture of sharing your password with each other. And encryption plays a very important part here. That is one software technique that every organization should follow. If you are keeping your data on cloud and you think that it is not secure enough, you should always involve encryption. And so that would ensure that your data is always secure. So that is one of the techniques. Another important technique could be distributed storage. Don't put all your eggs in a single basket. The cloud gives you that ability, that there are so many data centers, so many availability zones across the country, across the world. Use that. Ensure that your storage is distributed in case something goes down. If there is some sort of attack in a single availability zone, the second availability zone, the second region, the third region will always be able to ensure business continuity as well as security for your application. So make use of the distributed storage that cloud is providing you. And for the keys that you are using to access your application, organizations used to have something called a hardware security module, which will be like a device or a USB where all their keys will be stored. Now today you have these kind of solutions available on cloud as well. You have cloud as HSM. You should be able to use it. So these are some of the techniques the cloud is providing to you, and it is a mixture of what solutions cloud is providing plus what culture you can embed in your organization. If you have all of these techniques in place, you are pretty much more secure than 95% of the organization out there which don't have a comprehensive security policy.
Right. So yes, great points, Siddharth. Trust no one and use the available securities for your applications. Benedict, there's a question here. In the private sector context, has COVID-19 accelerated digital transformation? And what are the challenges to go through this digital transformation? Benedict?
Yes, definitely. Actually, one of the biggest catalysts for this transformation has been for COVID. Yeah, I know it's not in a good way that we're saying it, but it's a more positive things that we can capture from COVID. Yeah, for instance, in the healthcare industry, maybe around 2-3 years ago, telehealth has always been already pioneering, right? And people has already starting to use it, but the enormous potential can only be used maybe for the last 3 to 6 months ago, right? But people are afraid to go to the hospital, and the hospitals are full of COVID patients, and the normal patients, they are also needs for the healthcare services, but they cannot go, or they're not willing to go to the hospitals because they are afraid, right? And then by the emerging of the telehealth, now it's okay. People can start to use that along with their mobile applications, maybe using Zoom or even Google Meet, right? And some of the video call providers starting to provide those services. In Indonesia, there are 3 internet service providers starting to capture the opportunity with the healthcare providers to deploy this sort of services. Before, they're never thinking of having those collaborations, right? Now, the internet service provider said, okay, let me provide you with the internet bandwidth. You can support us with the healthcare practices. Before, we need to beg them for bigger bandwidth. Now they're giving us for free. That's one of the instances, right? And then previously, the model for service care, right, has always been siloed, right? I know in certain healthcare services in Indonesia, Malaysia, or even in Singapore and some of the other Asian countries, the hospital has always been working alone. Hospital have their own laboratory, they have their own pharmacy. They did it on everything on their own. But with these emerging situations, people are still starting to collaborate, right? The IT companies, they provide with the technologies. But when they say, okay, you got to test it, these are the listed of approved labs that can do the COVID testing, right? It is not only for one single hospital or 2 single hospitals, but there are small labs, medium labs, or even big hospitals, right? And the patients can just easily select, right? Oh, I want to take the test in here, and then they have maybe different sort of services, right? Maybe 24 hours result, or even within 6 hour result, right? It depends. So basically, it creates opportunity on the market. That's why in Indonesia, sadly speaking, some people saying that okay, this COVID is being monetized too much, right? Because people are starting to create some sort of business model on how to deal with it. But actually, it's not just only that, but through this transformation, it is the most quickest transformation for the past 10 years, right? Maybe the past 1 year or 2 years, it's very, very rapid, the emerging for COVID, yes, but also the transformation in the healthcare industry is very big. Yeah, previously I was from the healthcare industry until 2017. I moved back to the banking industry, but this year I switched back again to the healthcare. Why? Because I was thinking the healthcare now has the key, right? And if it's showing about the opportunity for the technology, now healthcare is the front runner, no longer banking or insurances. It's not like.
All right, thank you for those insights, Benedict. No, so indeed, digital transformation has been accelerated because of COVID. Now, thank you, gentlemen. No, our time is up now, but it has been really insightful. It has been a productive and insightful conversation with you, gentlemen. So, Dr. Leo, thank you. Siddharth, thank you very much for your insights. Benedict, great insights from the private sector. No? So, while cloud adoption has been accelerated as well because of the pandemic, public cloud specifically has its security features. But as our panelists said, it is a shared responsibility with the organization and the cloud provider. So with that, we end this panel discussion. And thank you, panelists. Back to you, Bhavana.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ray. Thank you, Siddharth, Benedict, and Dr. Chen for joining us. What an incredible conversation it was, because you could, gauge from the experience the panel comes with the kind of answers to every, question, Ray, you put it out to them. So once again, a big, big thank you for being a part of this wonderful show today. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.